March 15th, 2023 meeting of the Torch Lake Township Zoning Board of Appeals to order. Will everybody please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first, item B on our agenda is approval of the agenda, and I think we need to update that. Cross off G, and then H moves up to G, and so on down the list. Any other thoughts? Okay. Do I need, yeah, I guess so. All those, I make a motion to approve the agenda as revised.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Okay. Item C, approval of the February 15th, 2023 meeting minutes. I have a couple of corrections, minor corrections. Under A, the meeting was called to order at 6 PM, not 7 PM.
Get an extra one, would you?
Here, you can take my set. I have already made changes.
Or here, wait, take this one. He's not here.
Oh, well, I'm not using it anyway.
Okay.
I already changed some of the original.
Thank you.
David, you need one?
No, I thought you said you didn't have a pen.
Oh, I got you. Okay, sorry, Laura.
Okay, under item A, meeting was called to order at 6 PM, not 7 PM. Under findings of fact, item number 22, second line of that, of the existing garage into a family room and construction of additional, just a typo there. Okay, at the end, J, summary of actions, next meeting, 3/15/23.
Where are you, Laura?
J, on the last summary of action items, 3:15, she has like our date.
So you've gone by the findings of facts?
She has.
Okay.
Okay, and then in my notes, I had under K, that Anderson made the motion and Nussdorfer seconded, I'm sorry, Nussdorfer made the motion and Anderson seconded it. That's all I had. Anybody else?
I do.
Go ahead.
In findings of fact number 4, where it says the critical dune restricts, should it say the critical dune act restricts placement?
Well, the fact, that was one of my findings, and
Okay,
that's how we stated it.
Okay.
And that's how I
Okay.
intended it to be stated.
in that same sentence, did you say in your findings of fact the same size garage? Did you actually say same size?
I think I just said placement of the garage on the north side of the house. Is that what you have?
I wasn't sure. I questioned it because wasn't sure whether it was the exact same size, whether you would have said same size or not.
No, I don't believe I did. So remove same size.
Or just, yeah, yeah. On number 16, where it says the Torch Lake zoning ordinance is more of a grammar thing because you're talking about a specific ordinance. I think Z and the O should be capitalized. The same thing with number 17, you're talking, without capitalizing, you're talking about a generic, where if you capitalize Z, capitalize O, you're talking about a specific one. In number 19, it should say often, comma, frequent, comma, usual and ordinary. In number 28, I don't think indispensable should be capitalized. In number 29, it says specifically the applicant's AR. I think it's area, is what I said. Do you see that?
Yep.
Number 35, there is no number 35, but there's a number 35. Then in item D, where it says, upon concluding the discussion, it says, motion by Anderson to deny, that's capitalized and should not be. Under D, where it talks about that the authorizing variance and it lists the names with the roll call vote. It's under, sorry, it's under,
Upon conclusion, so the second line says motion by Anderson.
Okay.
So the paragraph underneath that line.
which is motion by Anderson to deny the ZBA. That should not be capitalized. And that's what all I have. That's what I have.
All right, anyone else?
In that case, I'll make the motion to approve the February 15th, 2023 minutes as corrected.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. I guess we didn't need conflict of
No.
interest tonight either.
No,
We
we
might
do,
still-
because she's
But we
diehard
might
Michigan
still-
and we're
Well, and
not.
we might still with what's here.
Pardon?
We might still have a conflict of interest with
Okay,
what's
so
here.
does anyone have a conflict of interest this evening?
Not with the way the agenda reads now.
Okay. All right, then let's move on. Public comment. No public, so I guess we'll move on from there. Do we have any communications?
I received none. Do you?
No.
Okay,
However, before we finish, Sarah, before you walked in, we had some questions as a board regarding if we should talk about it. Well, why don't you go ahead, Dave, and ask Sarah your question, and then we'll go from there. I think that might be.
Will you just turn your microphone on? Done. Yep, right there.
My question is, how did the, this whole application the fellow turned in on Bay Colony Road happen with the zoning, with us not knowing what the proper zoning was? It seemed like that would be number one question.
Yeah.
The first thing we check.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wrong,
Right.
apparently.
Yeah. So what happened is he was in and he talked with Jackie. And that was the zoning district that Jackie gave to him. And that's the zoning district that I relied on. Typically, one of us would have caught that in the process. You know, usually I go through and I verify the zoning when I'm doing the staff report. It's something that I missed. And that's how we got there.
Does this happen very often?
No.
Okay.
It's not typical. I mean, and So in talking to the applicant, I mean, it actually makes it so he doesn't need a variance, his setbacks are less, and so he was happy with it, and he's gonna pull a
yeah,
land use
it
permit
changes,
to
yeah.
build his house, so, he was fine with it, we met with him last night to talk with him, and, you know, so in the end, I know that it was a process, you guys did your research on it, but
My next question would be then, I think that zoning is bad for that area. How do we get
the planning
the
commission's the
planning
one.
commission to look at that?
I think it's gonna be an item of discussion at April's meeting.
You think so?
Mhm.
Okay. That land is wetlands.
Did that end up being an R2?
It's a timber reserve.
So
And that was, those 3 lots are okay according to,
They're non-conforming lots. They were platted prior to zoning. And so,
okay, so we're going with that. All right.
yeah.
So that brings me to a couple questions. One is, and I appreciate you bringing it up first, is that I just feel that our township, the residents and future residents of our township should in good faith know that when they come to our township building and ask a question, that they're given honest and accurate information. And I just think maybe there needs to be, and this isn't against either of you. I mean, we all make mistakes, and things like this have come up that don't have anything to do with zoning or your department, but there needs to be a check and balance system so people know that when they're coming in our door and they're asking us a question, that they're getting the correct information. Because what has happened with that being forest reserve is that they should have had to go before the planning commission and gotten approval to be able to clear cut what he clear cut. It's protected wetland.
If it's protected wetland, then that's an Eagle issue.
Yes, it is.
So-
And she had told him that too. I've spoken with Carrie Kent. And so, it just kind of opened a door that I'm not necessarily saying he shouldn't be able to build there or anything, but he didn't go through the correct channels and the correct process that other people have to.
Well, we don't have any regulations about clear cutting your own property. So we don't require any permits to clear cut your property unless you're supposed to get your land use permit before you do. If you're clear cutting towards a permit, you should get your permit before you clear cut.
Right.
But this was a topic of discussion. I think did the planning commission talk about it? Maybe it was just an internal discussion about, because there was some clearing on some other property, and the township was looking at maybe putting in an ordinance about cutting trees or what that looked like. And it becomes very difficult because of the amount of property we have and the amount of trees that we have, and we're not a city. And so if somebody cuts one down and the enforcement and all of that, so we kind of got away from it.
Okay, so then I have a question then, because when you look in give me a second, because I should have made a note. When you look under timber reserve in chapter 11, which is what that area is all timber reserve, it says the township under the purpose, the township contains several land areas connected to or in close proximity to lakes, rivers, streams, in which have a high water table or are wholly or partially submerged, which the whole front of that property is. And it goes on, but then it talks about permitted uses, and then it references back to, I believe it's chapter 17, and it says they have to go special uses. The planning commission, they have to go before the planning commission to get a special use permit. So it kind of puts you in a spiral.
Well, are you talking about item A, harvesting of timber?
Uh-huh.
So that's not what he wasn't harvesting. That's not the use that he was using for the property. The use of his property is C. The use is permitted in R1 because he's building single family. So he's not required to comply with A. Like, he's not harvesting the timber. That's not his purpose. It's not going to sit vacant
Okay.
as harvesting timber.
But then that's confusing, because then if it says those uses permitted in R1, but he doesn't fit the criteria for R1, I know it's a non-conforming lot, but it's this whole, I think the planning commission, someone needs to look at it more closely
Right.
and make it so it's.
Well, and that's what some of the things that we were hoping to work on with the draft zoning ordinance that the planning commission's not moving forward with.
Okay,
So, so to try to clarify some of this, because there are portions of the zoning districts that have regulations that kind of do that. They get very circular because they're referencing other sections, and those sections shouldn't really apply and different things. So
right.
we were trying to clean that up and clarify that, and that was a part of the draft zoning ordinance process. And so the planning commission's working through now amending the existing ordinance kind of in bit by bit amendment by amendment process. Things like this, I don't know, that's kind of low on the list because
Right.
it drags through so much of the ordinance. It's really difficult to do as an amendment versus just rewriting that portion of the ordinance. But no, I agree.
Well, and I think my concern is, again, in looking at this case, it made me think and kind of then generally look at our whole township where we have this timber reserve and different things and our watershed, and protecting that. And then the opening statement of our master plan is protecting the natural beauty and all of that. And so I just thought like, it just doesn't all gel.
Yeah.
You should come and see me after Paul Taylor shared an email with me that he exchanged with Carrie Kent about what the soils are there and why she allowed him to do what he's doing.
Okay.
A lot of technical stuff. But
Is there a lot in the township of timber reserve?
I don't have a,
I just curious, it doesn't, I don't need it.
it's a weird district. We don't typically deal in it that frequently.
According to this map right here, are we getting too far off the subject? I don't know, I don't want to get too far off.
No, I think we could take a few.
I'm looking at this where he is, and there's a road back here that I can't,
Yeah, that's not a built-out subdivision, that's why.
but those are tiny lots.
Yeah, all of the dark green is timber reserve.
Oh, okay, well, that's quite a bit.
Yeah, this is ag, the light green's ag, the dark green is timber. But that
Okay,
whole
so-
subdivision, they're 40 by 90 lots. There may be an exception, but generally that subdivision is.
They look very consistent.
Yeah.
On the original plat now.
Right, some of them
One
may
of
have been
my
combined.
questions was whether some of that has been changed or abandoned, or is there,
The only thing that's been changed is that there have been, some of the lots have been combined. If they were all under one ownership, they may have been combined, kind of like what this property owner did.
okay.
There were two different lots and he combined them together to make a little bit larger lot.
So this could happen again all through this area.
It will happen throughout that whole development.
Oh.
Well, maybe not. I mean, they're only 40 foot wide, yeah. If anybody wants to build anything in there, they're gonna be in front of the zoning board of appeals. Unless they combine the lots. Because the side setbacks are 40 feet. And the lot's only 40 foot wide. So no matter to build a house on one of those lots, you would have to come to the zoning board of appeals.
Right, so that,
On one,
Right.
yes, on one lot, so that begs the question is, how are we gonna deal with that? I mean,
Right.
unless, I think it's really something the planning commission, which you said they're going to address, because technically speaking, we would have to give them a variance, otherwise we're denying them the right, and that's
Right.
on a single lot.
Right.
So that's
We can't make that lot unbuildable with zoning because it existed prior to zoning. So it kind of forces the zoning board of appeals hands to allow them to build something on it. And if they can't
but we
meet the
don't have
setbacks
any say
anyway.
in it. Because it's in the timber reserve. We can't do anything about it, right?
No, the ZBA cannot, but the planning
planning
commission should
commission.
take a look at it. And I'm gonna add it because last month you had mentioned about the small lots on the waterfront and the planning commission should look at those a little bit more. And then these lots kind of in this group are another.
Or even a bigger problem.
Yeah. And I think these lots have laid dormant for, this was platted, what, was the 40s or the 60s?
It was the 60s.
Why-
60s?
Because in the 40s, the New Bounds owned all that land.
Okay.
And then in the 60s,
Okay.
when
Yeah.
they died, then someone else had it. And
Platted. And nobody's built in there. And
And
I don't know if
think
it's
it
the
was-
land.
I think it
if
was
the-
intended for a mobile home park. to be
Prob-
honest.
Could be. that would make sense. But, those lots exist, and even though the land is not really suitable for development because of the wetlands or the high water table, if people have them and the land exists, it's easier to develop than buying something else. It's a lot. It's not the back ones, maybe they don't have the roads built, but those front ones that are on the road, I'm surprised they've survived this long. Unless it's restricted, like he might have bought more so he could put his
There are actually
septic.
old dirt roads going
Are there all?
through there that have over time, people have planted trees in them
Yeah.
or cut timber and dropped it across the
Those
road
were-
so people can't get back
And
there.
those weren't actually real roads. That was when the new bounds, they were an older couple, one of the first homes that was in there. And over the winters, the trees and because there's a watershed through there, the road would wash out. So
Wow.
then every spring, they kind of cleared a new route to their home.
That makes
So
sense.
that's why they're like.
So they
that.
aren't necessarily the platted roads, but
They
there
are
are dirt paths, shall we say.
Yes, yes. And I would tell anyone this just because in good faith, I have to say it. It's really important you look at property and walk property before you purchase it because it is standing wetland.
Yeah.
I really feel that going forward with the request we're going to get at this board are these outsized lots. All the regular lots have probably been bought by now, unless they're resold by a realtor or something. But these class like this, in the last two cases we've had, have been that these odd size, they just want to be on Torch, or they want to be close, and I think we just have to be awful careful what we allow and stick as close as we can. I made this comment, I think, in the last meeting, to our plan.
Right.
And be careful about variances, because somebody will pick up on it, and then if we do it once.
Well, and the other thing to remember too, though, is that there's no precedent. Just because someone met the criteria does not necessarily grant the next person. And I say that because this past weekend, I reread, if you haven't read it, I would reread it. When we got our, the Zoning Board of Appeals handbook, it was, for whatever reason, it was sitting out and I started rereading it and it's really important. I think we should all reread the introduction and just the purpose of our job and what's in it. And and to educate the public too, it's not our personal choice or our decision or what we want, and I think it's really important that people know that there's a check and balance there and it's not my opinion,
I agree with that, yeah.
Good. Can I ask a couple of questions?
Sure.
Along that same line? So I keep hearing a couple of the people saying that the whole timberland is protected wetlands. Because I specifically asked that question whether it was wetlands and I was told no. So, but yet now I'm hearing that in fact, it is wetlands. So I'm confused.
Yeah, and not all of the timber reserve is wetland.
Okay.
And what Carrie said to me is that she can't stop them from building there, or putting in a septic, even though there is wetland there, unless it was a critical dune. That Eagle looks at different criteria, the soils and stuff like that. And so,
I don't know, because when we were looking at it, we were not allowed to build in certain places because it was wetlands. So that's why I was just asking. That's
So there's different types of wetlands. There's regulated wetlands, and those
Okay.
are within 500 feet of a lake, I believe. They're either directly connected, like with a stream or something,
okay.
connected to a big water,
Okay.
or within 500 feet. Then
Okay.
there's just wetlands that are wetlands, but they're not regulated. So if
Okay.
they're not regulated wetlands, then Eagle doesn't get involved in them. They're not under their purview
Okay.
or control.
at
Okay.
least for right now, that has changed
Ha-
back and
that-
forth over.
Right. Yes, that's currently how
So
it
when you
works.
did it, they may have been regulating that.
Okay.
They're not right now.
Right. And you may have there may be a stream through there, or you may relate it to the water, or you know, something like that. And that could be the difference.
So the final thing is during that training session yesterday, people were talking about a taking clause. Do we have a taking clause in our manual or our handbook?
No, I don't, that's part of
Or was that
state,
particularly
federal, that's
one particular?
property, American, US property rights.
Okay,
Right.
And so basically, if in here it says somebody has, something is by right,
Mhm.
that means if you take that right away, you're violating the taking clause.
okay,
Right, like you're taking somebody's property from them essentially.
okay.
No, we don't have, we try to avoid taking clauses in any way we can on the government side of it.
Okay.
So, but I don't know the exact context they were talking about it. But yeah, that's almost like a curse word around, you know,
It was
around
basically,
here.
it was really the same thing.
Right, yeah, I
It
was
was
just
these
saying,
case-
you don't want a
case studies.
takings clause. That's what I was gonna say,
Yeah.
okay, I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
So you can't,
Yeah,
prevent people, okay.
yep, no.
All right.
Okay. So I think we can all agree that there's a lot for the planning commission to think about, and this information will be passed on, right?
How does that, do you take that to them?
Okay, and
Yeah,
that
because your representative's not here, so I'll take it to
yeah,
them.
that was my question is
Yeah.
because Kevin's not here, how do
Yeah.
things get communicated? back
I've
and
already
forth?
talked to Andy about it, so as the chair, he'll make sure that I don't forget about it.
I appreciate
Good.
that.
I actually told him I'd put it on the agenda for him.
Good. Maybe we should all attend that meeting.
I think
Yeah.
I'm gonna play.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think we
there's,
should all stand up in public comment and have a comment.
yes. Or you can provide something in writing if you can't make it to the meeting, just in general, you know, you can say that you're a ZBA, but you're, you know, speaking on behalf of yourself as well. You're welcome to provide something in writing and send it over to zoning@torchlaketownship.com, and we'll make sure that they get a copy of it. .org, I apologize. Just making it up.
As we go.
You would have started typing in, it would have auto-populated. You never would have known I was wrong until Jackie just told you.
Right. Okay,
May I ask one more question? Sorry. So for minutes, when you guys, Jackie or whomever is taking the minutes, obviously you're frantically writing and stuff, but do you also go back and watch or listen? How do you get I was curious about that. Okay.
Yeah, I rewind it and play it, rewind and play it. In fact, I'm dying to go rewind and play that.
I know, I was curious about that.
It's gonna really bother me. I do not play, I don't.
About the same
Same
size. Yeah.
Yeah, because you were pretty, that's why I was asking how.
I didn't bring my notes with me.
Yeah, That's okay. I
I
think it's a
did
material,
Really a
but
moot point.
yeah.
It really is. For my learning.
I'm comfortable either way. I didn't call it out when I read through it because I thought it was consistent with
yeah, close enough.
what I meant, but, okay. Shall we move on to item G, miscellaneous business, zoning administrators report?
You have the zoning administrator's report on your desk for the activities. I don't think much has changed. Well, we met, I guess, land use permits, we did have a couple since your meeting. And we're just working through a couple of violations. That's the most excitement we have going on right now. It sounds like a couple of you went to training for zoning board of appeals through the MAP process. That's great. I'm glad to hear that. That you were able to get that training in more detail, I guess, related to ZBA. So we'll keep our eyes out to see if there's any additional training available. If you didn't get to make it, or if there's a different topic or something that's relevant to you as well. So I think that's all that I wanted to mention to the ZBA. We do not have an application for next month's meeting, so we will not have a meeting next month since we were able to approve minutes for a case tonight. So you can take April off.
Yay. And attend the PC meeting.
There you go.
Okay, and then, do you have anything to report from the PC that since Kevin isn't here?
They're working on the sign section of the ordinance, just in general. That's what they've been working on. We had a public hearing last night about it. There's a couple more changes in it that are going to come back to their April meeting. Last night, they talked about adding in electronic message signs, so the LED signs or electronic changeable copy. And there was some confusion over what everybody was talking about when you're talking about what's everybody used to call them an LED sign, but LED is just the light bulb, and a lot of things are lit by LEDs now. So, kind of, I usually call them an electronic message sign or changeable message sign. So they were going to do a little more research on that because the consensus at the Planning Commission was to allow electronic message signs in the village and commercial districts of the township. So they were going to go out and look around and in their travels and see if that's something that they really wanted to allow in the township. And that was one of your first cases, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Well, like kind of as a new ZBA on signage and the LED signage, so I know that.
Right, because it was really tough.
Yeah.
The shielded lights, if you
Yes.
there was a big issue and you can't.
It was a tough one
Shield.
due to the language.
Yeah.
You know,
So we're working, the signs were the first big chunk, as I mentioned that the draft they didn't want to move forward with. So like, okay, start bringing language back, and signs is an easy one in the sense that it's one section of the ordinance. We can amend it. It doesn't weave throughout the whole document. Plus that section is outdated since 2015 when case law says we can't regulate signs by reading the content. You have to do content neutral signage. So it's really been a long time needing to be updated to be compliant. Content neutral. Yeah, so you can't read the sign to determine what it is. So our current ordinance regulates temporary signs as real estate signs, political signs, open house signs, garage sale signs. You can't regulate those signs like that and all differently. You have to just say temporary signs. You can have, and whatever they say. And the court case had to do with, they were treating religious signs different than real estate signs in this community in Arizona. And so the religious signs could only be up for, say, 3 days, and the real estate signs could be up for 5 days. So went all the way up through the U.S. Supreme Court. So you think zoning is kind of boring and uninteresting. It was at Supreme Court, the signs, and they made a decision about signage. So, we have to treat the same type of sign the same for everybody, no matter what it says on it.
Okay, and I have one thing I'd like to bring up, possibly to discuss with PC. I have been going back and forth ever since I joined this board on the criteria and reading what is stated in the literature from MAP and is it MTA? And various books and what we have. And I struggle a little bit. I think that maybe if everybody was interested in doing it, we should review that language and review the criteria that is commonly, I found 5 common criteria, and it's not, usually it says it'll have something to do with this and something to do with this. The one that we are technically missing would be the minimum amount.
Necessary.
We don't have that in ours, but I think our first one is very convoluted. I think that we have a lot of kind of duplication between the first and the second one. And I'm wondering if we can't kind of simplify, clarify, and come up with, rewrite the criteria so that it's easier for everybody.
concise,
A little
maybe?
more concise, easier for everybody to understand, and maybe not have so much overlap.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good amendment that we could put in front of the Planning Commission because that one doesn't weave throughout the whole ordinance. It's very limited to a section. What I would say though, instead of the Zoning Board of Appeals working on the language with it, because it's very important language, it would be something that maybe I would work with the attorney and have them, but also say, here's our issues. This
Okay,
is
so
our-
I was going to say, should I meet with you
Yeah.
and give you my thoughts on that?
Yeah.
And then see if we can't.
Right, and I would encourage any of the ZBA members, if you have any thoughts on the criteria, feel free to email them over maybe in the next couple of weeks, and then we can start working on that, and I can make that one of the upcoming amendments for the planning commission. Yeah, we'll try to make your life easier.
Okay.
That's good.
I guess that's all I had as far as planning commission was concerned. Did
Yeah.
you have anything else?
I forgot to mention, during my, I guess it's not really my report, I was wondering what the ZBA's thoughts were about getting the application before the rest of the packet. Although I totally failed you this time about the zoning district, but outside of that, what your thoughts were, or if you liked it, if it needs to change, anything, no comment.
I like having it available as soon as possible because I do read through it a couple of times, but just to get me thinking. And so I'm not necessarily working on it, doing the site visit yet, but thinking about questions and things that pop up in my head. And I just prefer to work that way. So it'd be great for me to have it. I don't know how everybody else feels.
I personally would say the same thing. I like having it. I like being able to have time to process through it. And I did think I don't know if I sent it to everyone, but I know I did to Sarah. I really like having a paper copy in the mailbox, and I like having my last name on it. So when I go in there, I know I'm getting the copy and it's mine. And because there's been times where I've come in the past and there isn't a copy, and it's not a big deal, but then I have to go find the master and make copies. So I appreciate it when it has my name on it.
And then you don't feel like you're taking the last one or
Yes,
someone
or someone else's book or something.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I'm not going to say anything right now.
No, it's just, I mean, I agree. I also like the application. I mean, is now that there's going to be, like David had requested, there's going to be a double check to review the application so we don't have another, mishap like we had. Are we still going to be able to get the application at least a week ahead of time? Because I mean, we didn't get the package till Saturday morning and the case was scheduled till Wednesday.
Right.
On
I mean, I
Wednesday,
emailed the
so-
packet out on Friday, but Jackie wasn't able to make copies until Saturday for you, which is a little bit later than I would
Yeah.
like to get the whole packet out to you, honestly. But that's just how the week went,
Yeah,
and it didn't
no.
get out.
But I mean,
so.
if we can get the application with the double check,
Right.
on the application, I mean, at least a week ahead of time, that'd be good, because I review it as well.
Yep, that's what I was just wondering, if that you felt like that kind of worked, or if I've been thinking about it and trying to figure out the best way to do it. And I kind of mentioned this last month, because to me, it feels like you should get the whole packet the first time with the application, but then there's information that comes in during that period of time. So I don't know the appropriate time to give that to you. Typically, the policy is once the packet goes out, everything gets held until the night of the meeting.
Oh.
If you
So
have.
right, because everybody has to have the same information.
Right, and I don't like to email you out, say public comment starts coming in, just keep forwarding it when it comes in, because you can lose it in your box. It's not grouped together. It's difficult to know who's getting it or what's happening. And so not with this case, but some cases, if there's a lot of public comment, I also don't want to drop a stack of public comment on your desk the last, night. So I've been trying to think if it makes sense, and feel free to think about this, if it makes sense to do the packet whenever we send the application out. Say we send it out the Friday, not 2 weeks, but a week and a half, like the Friday, so you have 2 weekends to review. If we did a packet then, could we send up a follow-up supplemental information out like around Monday at noon for a Wednesday meeting? Or or a Friday by the end of the day, so you have the week, like I'm trying to think through what would make sense.
So what would be comfortable for me would be having the application, any information, the Friday, two Fridays before, so that you do have 2 weekends to work on it. And then any final information the Friday before, so you've got the last
weekend.
4 or 5 days to work on it. And then I guess, I mean, if it could be done that way, I feel that would be helpful. Then hopefully by the Friday before everything's in, if it's not, then any new information would have to be given to us at the meeting,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm just trying to kind of get through that, so.
Can you, question, as we're forming this, public comment that is emailed in, when do they have, when is their deadline?
It is the noon the day of?
Noon the day of.
Yeah, anybody
Okay.
can submit in writing up to the noon of the day of. Usually what we tell somebody is, well, not usually, this is what we tell somebody, is that if you get your public comment in before the packets go out, it's in the packet. If you miss the packet, they get it the night of. Packets go out about a week before. The public notices that go in the newspaper and that get delivered within 300 feet are required to go out 15 days before the meeting. Typically, the newspaper is a little bit before that, it's about 20 days, just because we print in a once weekly for that. So people have a little bit more lead time on that, but that part, if we're dropping notices in the mail, right around 15 days, I'm sending out a packet 10 days, you may not get that public comment. So that's where I'm trying to, I just don't want you to show up and be like, I need more time, let's go home.
Right.
Or I guess you could always recess the meeting to say, okay, let's read through this. But then I think that's kind of awkward because you're sitting here and you have all these eyes on you as you're trying to read, and you can't really formulate your thoughts at the same time. I really feel like if you can kind of read it and marinate on it and think about it and come back to it. So maybe we'll try the Friday.
Yeah, I personally would like that, and maybe have like the first packet that comes out, is like the pre-packet or something,
Yeah.
and then.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'm trying to support the ZB, support you, and so you can do your job. And so I'm trying to figure out the best way to do it, I guess. So,
With this last case, I think I came in and there just happened, Sharon was in here with somebody on a Sunday and made copies of the plat. I had an old
Oh.
book, and that made a big difference seeing everything. And I don't know if that original packet could at least have that, so we have that quick
the
comparison.
plat that was emailed out plat.
It was a blown up, it showed the hundreds of those little
Oh.
tiny lots and everything. I mean, if we're comparing, like we're saying,
Right.
similar properties, and all of a sudden we're looking at that was much
Yeah.
bigger than most of these others.
Yeah.
My plat book is just way too old.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think some of the things we're doing, so we're working on digitizing the zoning map too, so that you'll be able to blow it up easier, like online to look at it versus, right now it's like a scanned in copy and you're trying to blow it up and look at it and it's difficult to see where things are. So digitizing that. Something you can also do too is the Antrim County has their GIS and their map online. So you can go in, and if you're interested, we can show you how to get there. You can go in there and then you just put in the parcel number or the address, and it, or actually I could probably put it in the email when I send it over. And you can click on it and then you can zoom out and zoom in and look around and click around and see properties.
That's,
be helpful.
yeah, that's super helpful, because that's what I did, and that was what helped me figure out, actually, for the last few cases, even though I didn't participate.
great.
Yeah.
That's a great.
I'll try to remember to do that. If I send one out and you say, hey, can you
Really
send me a link or get me there, remind me I'll try to remember, but who knows how long it'll be until we have our next case and what'll happen before then. So.
When you're getting public comment from people, there's the other item that I saw in the training, that they were saying that people should also come with evidence, like hard evidence, photos and things. So when people are asking about how do I make a public, do we tell them it's like, you need to come with photos or any kind of hard evidence?
Most of the time, the notice just says as a public hearing, you can provide public comment. That's a kind of a rule for the ZBA and the Planning Commission, is that, the public comment's supposed to be related to the standards and help you make a decision and keep your feelings out of it. And most people, the reason they're in it is because it's their neighbor and they like their neighbor or they don't like their neighbor. And so if someone asks about it, we explain more about it. You know, it's based on the standards. They make their decision on the standards. But a lot of times we don't have that interaction with the public. It's more we just receive it in the mail.
Okay.
And even I've found even over the years, even when you explain to them and say, you know, if you really don't want this, you need to look at the standards, go through it, make your cases, and do that, they still don't do it.
Okay. Right.
That evidence thing, that really bothered me. There's no way most people could ever get that together. One of the, was with the gravel company, and how many trucks and how much sand they had. One of those cases we saw.
Yeah. Well, even if you can
There's
find,
no baseline.
but if you can find one standard that you kind of, as the public, if you can find one standard that you can focus in on and prove that is not met. But it's really difficult. And that's one of the hardest things, I think, as a general member of the public, it's frustrating interacting with government because a lot of people don't understand these are the standards. We have to make our decision based on it. And it's based on evidence. Right. And so a lot of times people feel unheard because you have a whole room full of people not supporting a project, but all the boxes are checked and everything's met. And that's where I think that's where that friction comes from. And we've not come up with a good solution on how to make that better. And mining's even worse because the state took away so much powers from the local government that people just get mad about it. There's absolutely nothing we can do about it.
What about just making use of like the dry erase board or this and like actually having what the standards are, like educating the public, educating the people that are in this room or that are watching it, that these are the standards and this is what has to be meet. This is the criteria, like, so they know.
Yeah.
We're not just.
Well, I think fortunately, at least with the dimensional variances, we're lucky we do have set criteria. So, and we present it and we talk about it every time and
Right.
and we go through it. So I think that helps sometimes.
Alleviate some of that maybe.
Maybe make it even more understandable.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that.
I mean, we could put potentially the checklist that you go through for each of the case. We could make some extra copies maybe and just put them on the back table, and then you could always say, oh, and you can read along with exactly what we're going through if you want to, and make your own notes. We could try something like that. I mean, that helps here at least when people are here in the audience.
Right.
Maybe. I don't know if it'll change the input, but
No, but I mean, at least we're trying to educate,
yeah.
that there is really a process.
Yeah, and I think, when you're dealing in it, and especially at the ZBA level, but all of the public meetings is, a lot of times individuals don't get involved until it directly impacts them and their property or their neighboring property. And so we continuously go through this process of educating individuals because there's always new people that are involved on the public side. So just about the time you're like, oh, I think everybody has it, there's a new group of people, and it's not their fault. It's just that the only way to get educated in it is to be in it. And
Right.
you're not in it until you're impacted.
Until you have it.
Right. And they don't teach it in school, and every state's different. And so.
But that's why I was saying, if it was actually written out where they,
Mhm.
as they're sitting there, can read it or see it.
Mhm.
Because I go back to like the planning commission meeting regarding the Dollar General. That was, you could cut it.
Mhm.
That was a tough meeting to sit in on.
Mhm.
And it was very obvious that a lot of the people in the room didn't understand the process that they
Mhm.
were going through.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know, something to think about
Mm-hmm.
or to strive for.
Right.
maybe.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the comments. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to agenda item I. I think you've already kind of given that to us. So
I'm sorry that short meeting, I had to make it longer.
all right, so there are no actions, right?
Mhm.
All right then. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So move. Well, that's not right. I can't say that. I should say, I should
Didn't you
make.
learn anything?
I did. I just,
I
the
make
minute
a
I said that,
motion to adjourn.
They- Yes, the minute I said it, I knew it was.
So
I'll
do you wanna-
second.
So I make a motion
Yeah.
to adjourn.
Very good. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Okay. The motion's been made and seconded to adjourn this meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And it is 6:54.